Hi there, I'm going to try and do an unbiased comparison between AMD and Intel in their current states because you often get fanboys on each side, and I just wanted to give my recommendations of which processors you should really be looking at. This is for budget to mid-range to sort of high-end PC, and also running through the different types of things that you're going to be doing on your PC, so which you should give preference to. I just wanted to firstly go over the budget side of things. So you're this is going to be the really cheap end of things that you can just about get away with for a gaming PC, but be aware that it won't last you a huge amount of time. You probably will be having to upgrade after 6 to 12 months. For the really budget end, you're just looking at a processor that's going to run the games. You're probably not going to be maxing the games out anyway because you're running a budget PC, so you're not going to be able to afford the best graphics card. So really budget, you're probably going to be actually looking at Intel. That surprises a lot of people because everybody thinks AMD is best bang for buck. And in some cases they do offer better bang for buck, but in terms of the cheapest processor with the best upgrade pathway later on in its life using the same motherboard and giving the best performance at its price bracket, is currently the Intel Pentium G2020. This is a 2.9 GHz dual-core processor, and basically for the price it can't be beat. It will run all modern games. It is only dual-core, but currently that's not a huge issue. There aren't very many games that take true advantage of quad-core yet. You do have to be aware though that some games you will get a lesser sort of experience. For instance, in Battlefield 3, if you don't have 4 cores running, you do actually have one less AI partner, because the game just doesn't put it in because you don't have enough processing power to deal with the artificial intelligence. And in games like Assassin's Creed, there are a reduced number of artificial intelligences on screen or in a level loaded at any one time, again because the processor to avoid lag basically from the processor because it's unable to deal with that many AI on screen. But other than that, all games will run completely fine. Things like some real-time strategy games, things like Civ 5 might get a bit slow if you're running the really big maps. But if you're just going to want to run something like, if you can even play Battlefield on it, no problem. You're just going to have to be aware in the campaign you have one less AI player, and you can run all games fine. You just, in some cases, is going to get a little bit slow at times. I should clarify, in Civ 5 it's only going to be between turns. When you're running the AI turns, it will probably slow down a bit. You might have to wait a minute between turns, sort of thing. Going up from that, you're looking at FX just to a slightly higher price bracket. Is it FX 4100 or 6100? Or I believe now this is 6350. Go for the 6350 because, let me just check. 6100, 6300. The 6100 is quite a lot cheaper. Basically, it's the 4100 or the 6100 are the two sort of cheaper ones from AMD. The 6100 adds one extra module that I'm going to explain in a minute to the processor, and it's at such a small price increase that you should go for the 6100. Now, I mentioned modules there because AMD doesn't have the standard core architecture that we're used to. Basically, what happens with AMD was they brought out this new architecture called Bulldozer, and there's another one called Pile Driver that's basically the same thing. It's just a refined version of Bulldozer. And what they basically did was they removed the fetch and decoder units from both cores and made it say every 2 cores has one fetch and one decoder unit. What this means is every 2 cores basically has, how do I explain it? Mixed resources. No, not mixed resources, shared resources. So 1 core can only be doing, 2 cores, can only be doing one thing at any one time. So in some cases this doesn't matter, in some cases it does. For gaming, for instance, the issue is they're now at such high clock frequencies that the fetch and decoder gives an instruction to 1 core, and then as the fetch and decoder is getting the instruction for the next core, the first core is already finished. Um, and as you can see, that means that one core in every two cores is always idling. So in the case of the quad-core AMD, you're actually getting a dual core, hex core, sorry, you're actually getting a triple core, and octo core, you're actually getting a quad core in a lot of cases. In the cases this doesn't apply is in video editing or sound editing or video rendering, which is when the fetch and decoder just give the processor a task, and that process just gets churned away on the processor core. And this will use all of the cores. But for gaming, you're not actually getting true quad-core, hex-core or octo-core performance, and the AMD CPUs are priced accordingly. That's why the 8-core AMD CPU costs, I think it's less than a lot of the i7s. So I think you can pick one up for around 175 or something like that. From somewhere like Scan, I'll look now, £154.60. So that's an incredibly cheap CPU considering it's 8 core, but you can see because of this architecture, it's not actually being used as an 8 core most of the time, and that's why they've had to price it like that. They've had to price it competitively, even though it is an 8 core, because it's simply the architecture doesn't work properly in a lot of cases. And this is a big issue with the new AMD architecture. That's why I actually recommend going Intel at the minute. I'm in no way an Intel fanboy. I love the Phenom 2 series from AMD. It was a great series. It took Intel ages to come back with the i3, i5 and i7 series to counter it. But now this new Bulldozer series is unfortunately not great at the end of the day. But they are, if you're looking on a budget that's slightly above the Pentium budget, they are pretty good in terms of the FX 6100 series. It's probably one of the best budget game CPUs. The best gaming CPU out there is the i5 3570K. Personally, I didn't go for this because I have one of the new Ivy Bridge i5s. I went for the i5 3450 because that's still a high. It's 2.8 gigahertz, 3.2 gigahertz boost, I think it is. So it's still high clock speed, still quad core. The only difference is you can't overclock it, really. So if you want to get into overclocking, go for the 3570K. If you're not too bothered about overclocking, the difference of 400 megahertz is almost nothing when you're dealing with multiple core processors. So I would personally save some money and go for a slightly lower sort of 3450, 3470 processor, and then spend a bit more on your graphics card. That's my opinion. And now going up even further, and this, you don't want to go up further unless you're going to be recording in game. So a lot of people use things like fraps, and it causes a huge amount of lag if you are trying to use it while you're playing a game. So for instance, I can record something like Dota 2 just about in game, but it does cause a lot of lag. It's not unplayable, but you sort of, if you're going to record something like Battlefield 3, where it's a first-person shooter and you really need those reaction times, you're probably just going to die all the time. And in cases like this, you do want to go up to the i7. You want the hyper-threading of the i7. I can't vouch for the AMD 8 core. I don't think it's gonna. I think you're going to run into the same issues as I talked about earlier with the modules, because it's actually just recording video. It's not editing video. So the i7 3770K would be the best processor to go for if you're going to be recording gaming video through something like Fraps. Just because then you can avoid the lag and you can play things like Battlefield 3 at fairly steady FPS without any issues. Moving up from this even further, if you're looking at a computer to do video editing in After Effects, there's a major sort of thought especially with the younger people who are just getting into sort of video editing or photo editing, that the Mac is the one to go for. It is not. I can't stress this enough. If you're going to entry-level video editing, you want the i7 3770K again. Okay, so don't bother spending all your money on a Mac. Get a solid-state drive in your PC, and I promise you it will run twice the speed of any iMac you buy. Go for the 3770K. If you're sort of professional video editing using After Effects and stuff, you actually move up to the Intel 2011 socket and want to go for the 3930 or higher processor. That's the i7-3930, and these are hex core i7s. These are like the top of the range. Give you the best performance you can get, especially for things like video editing. Their motherboards have 8 RAM slots, so you can easily fit 32 gigs in 4 gig sets. That gives you lower latency on the RAM, that gives you high performance. So yeah, I think that's my rundown of processors. Unfortunately, the FX 6100 is the only AMD processor I can recommend, and that is when you're on a tight budget, because you have to remember that if you're not on that tighter budget, you might actually be better going with Intel i3 for a similar price. It's not as powerful as the FX 6100, but one day that FX 6100 or that i3 is going to be outdated. The only choice you've got to go to in the AM3 Plus socket is the FX 8000 series, the 8-core FX. That's not that much higher than the FX 6000 series. Intel i3, okay, it's not the best processor around, but you can go all the way up to the i7-3770K that absolutely wipes the floor in terms of performance against any of the AMD equivalents that you can upgrade to in the AM3 Plus socket. So if you're looking at upgrade pathways, Intel is always the best to go with currently. And I say currently because it's the 17th of April 2013 today, and this stuff does go out of date. Well, these sort of videos can go out of date fairly quickly, because as soon as new hardware comes out, they're kind of out of date. And I'm going to try and do these videos every time new hardware comes out to try and keep at least one video in date at all times. Currently, in terms of processors, this shouldn't go out of date too fast, because I know Intel are looking to launch a new series of processors soon-ish, but nothing. I don't think it will be this side of 2014. I'm hoping. And yeah, that's my video on processors. If anybody has any thoughts or any recommendations of what they'd like me to do other videos on, I've done this video because I've seen a few videos out there on recommends for budget PCs and things like that, and they were absolutely diabolical. So I thought I'd do my own little tutorial for you, and I'm more than happy to go over things like RAM, power supplies, graphics cards. Just leave me a comment, give me a thumbs up, and I will go ahead and do one of those videos. Graphics card is something that a lot of people get a bit confused by, what kind of graphics card they need for a budget PC, or do you really need the dual GPU 690s kind of thing. So I'm more than happy to go over that. Just leave me a comment and I'll do one for you.